While the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire, around 1.9 million Palestinians have been displaced. Many Gazans fled towards Rafah after Israel urged them to leave parts of Khan Yunis, where hundreds of thousands had already fled from North Gaza earlier in the fighting. The UN is warning that a lack of food, fuel and medicine will not only lead to hunger and disease, but also a breakdown of civil order.
We are teetering on the edge of a possible implosion. We might reach our limit. Why? Because there is more and more a breakdown of a civil order, and as long the humanitarian assistance remain a crumble compared to the immensity of the needs, the more this tension will continue, the more the environment is becoming impossible. So the example I gave to you was indeed the example of that I witnessed. In fact, I saw it under my eyes and my watch, that people in Rafah have started to decide to help themselves directly from the truck out of total despair, and started to, eat what they have taken out of the truck on the spot.
Now, for more on the war, let's cross live to the Israeli city of Tel Aviv and speak with our special correspondent, Karl Bostic. Karl, great to have you on the program. Has the visit by the U.S. security advisor to Israel narrowed the gap between Israel and the U.S. on how the war is being fought and plans for Gaza after the war?
Good afternoon. Well, we're now into the third month of the war. It's now been 10 weeks since the war started with that horrible tragedy, that massacre on October 7th. And since then, Israel has been waging really an all-out war against Hamas. The U.S. is Israel's best friend. It's the best friend and last real friend. In fact, a Democrat senator from the U.S. said that Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, has now gone too far. What he's referring to are the consequences of this all-out bombing. 85% of Palestinians now displaced, 1 million on the border of Egypt in Rafah. The UNWFP World Food Program is saying half the Gazans of 2.3 million people are starving. 9 out of 10 do not eat every day. It's just a catastrophic crisis. Again, keep in mind, Gaza is only about a quarter the size of Abuja. And that mass displacement to the south, they're now in an area about an eighth the size of Abuja. And so the intention of the trip was to tell Israel and say, listen, we support the goal of eliminating Hamas, but you need to be careful because the civilian damage is just too great. We are now isolated in defending you. And what he's referring to is the fact that even the UN vote that took place on Tuesday, compared to the UN vote in October calling for a ceasefire, 30 more countries were calling for a ceasefire. 30 more countries opposed to what Israel is doing. And in President Biden's own Democratic Party, they're against the results of this bombing. To put things in perspective, Israel has unloaded about 29,000 bombs since October 7th. Now reports are saying that about 50% of those bombs were dumb bombs, unguided, non-precision bombs. That means that they were dumping bombs weighing up to 2,000 pounds on targets without any precision at all. And that's why the high casualty toll. And now the U.S. is saying, you can't just bomb like this indiscriminately. You've got to be more precise, and you need to, in the end, use more elite forces on the ground. No more bombing. So publicly, they're saying, we agree to the ultimate goal, but they're also saying that this phase must come to an end. That's why the speculation here in Israel is that the U.S. wants them to wind this down by the end of the year. That's 2 weeks from now. And meanwhile, the Israel defense officials are saying that it will take several months into next year before we can end this war. So that's where the gap is really so wide, if you will. And meanwhile, you've got some hardliners in this government in Israel. You've got Israel's president saying that with or without international support, Israel will do what it has to do, will go it alone. You also have another hardline cabinet minister saying today that when it comes to what happens to Gaza after the war against Hamas, Israel will reoccupy Hamas. Israel will reoccupy Gaza, that is.
Right. Now, can you give us more details about the poll taken of Palestinians on the war and what this really means for the future of Gaza?
Well, it's really striking because, again, as I say, here I am in Israel. I feel like I'm caught between two societies because I'm talking to a lot of Israelis, I'm talking to a lot of Israeli Arabs, and the view of the war and what caused the war, it couldn't be different. This was the most comprehensive poll of Palestinians in both the West Bank and Gaza, and it was comprehensive because these were face-to-face interviews. It was not done over the phone, and the results are just so startling. They're saying, for example, if anything, most respondents expressed the view that Hamas had made the right decision to attacking Israel. And 90% said they either did not know or did not believe that Hamas had committed atrocities on October 7th. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've spoken with Arabs and Israeli Arabs and Palestinians who actually were doubtful that those events occurred on October 7th, that they may have been fabricated by Israel. That's just how wide the gap is, which I just find, quite frankly, astounding. And amongst other findings, they were saying that the decision by Hamas to attack Israel, was the right decision. 70% of the respondents said they believe that Israel would not succeed in eradicating Hamas. 60% of the respondents, the highest share were recorded by the center, said they would support the dissolution of the Palestinian Authority. 90% saying that Mahmoud Abbas, that's who Jake Sullivan is visiting today, 90% saying that he should resign. So this is the mood on the ground amongst Palestinians. So if you're talking about a future of Gaza with the Palestinian Authority as a governing body, as a partner of Israel, but this is how the people on the street feel, that's a lot of lifting right now diplomatically that has to happen right now, because even the people on the ground, the Palestinians, don't trust the Palestinian Authority. And meanwhile, Hamas is still popular. And then finally, 1/3 of the respondents said they supported a two-state solution, while 65% said they thought the expansion of Israeli settlements had made such a proposed two-state solution impossible. I'll give you one last little detail. One analyst was saying, this morning that it would take another 10 to 15 years before you consider two-state solution. So they're so wide apart here in Israel, but I don't think, no one can wait for that. Patience is running out in the U.S. And around the world. And Israel right now, they're prepared to carry this offensive as long as it takes, despite the consequences militarily, civilian-wise, and even the humanitarian crisis itself.
Well, Karl, are there any signs of a change in Hamas's strategy for the war now that we're into a third month of it?
What's really very interesting is this, and to keep in mind that what has set Hamas apart from other, Palestinian parties like Fatah, Hamas from the outset was dedicated to the annihilation of Israel, did not recognize Israel. The reason why Fatah, was, the dominant party of the Palestinian authorities, because Fatah had officially recognized Israel's right to exist and renounced the use of military resistance against Israel. That's why you have the Oslo Accords that Yasser Arafat, the then Palestinian leader, agreed to at the White House in 1993. That was the deal. That was the agreement. Hamas never recognized that. That's why Hamas and Fatah were bitter enemies. So now things have come 180 degrees. Now we're hearing 2 days ago, the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, who is in Qatar, saying that we support the PLO position. We are open to all ideas and initiatives because we will accept the PLO position. I mean, that's just incredible to hear. And then you're having another senior official from Hamas saying that that Hamas should recognize Israel if this is a way to end the war. So how do you read between the lines? Reading between the lines means one of two things. It means that Hamas wants to be a player, a partner in the future of Gaza after the war. They want to still be the governing body. They've been in power for 16 years. But anyone here in Israel, they will tell you, after what happened on October 7th, they want nothing to do with Hamas at all. They want no part of it. And if it goes that direction, they'll reoccupy Gaza. That's where we're at right now. We actually have political leaders singing these soundings, but then that has not been communicated to the people, the Gaza leaders like Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. In fact, the U.S. is now saying that Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, that his days are numbered. Numbered in part for many reasons, not just October 7th, but because many of those killed were themselves U.S. citizens.
Right. Now, of course, speaking of those who are affected by this, so we're getting more revelations about the fates of those taken hostage. Can you bring us up to speed on this?
Well, what's interesting also is this. Every day those numbers keep changing. I mean, you hear that now more than 130 hostages still remain in captivity in Gaza. Well, it's kind of really an interesting sort of a number because at the same time, depending who's saying that, they also put hostages as really including hostages who may not even be alive. In other words, those could be bodies. That's why Hamas, in one proposal, they wanted to exchange 7 elderly men with 3 bodies as part of a hostage release plan. And I'm saying all of this because now, just a few days ago, they're admitting that there may be at least 19 hostages who are dead. Amongst those 19 was a foreigner. There are many foreigners amongst those 1,200 killed from different countries, from Thailand, from Russia, from Australia, and even from Africa. The only African country to have hostages taken or killed was Tanzania. 2 farming students who were working in a kibbutz. On October 7th, one of those Tanzanian farming students was killed on the spot. The second Tanzanian student, Joshua Mallet, he was taken into Gaza, said, "I'm not Israeli, I'm not Jewish, I'm African, I'm Tanzanian." He was held hostage and he was killed in Gaza. And Tanzanian government and his parents sent heartfelt pleas for him to be released. And only now, the other day, Israel has officially confirmed that Joshua Mallet, 21 years old, a young Tanzanian who wanted the experience of working on a farm or kibbutz in Israel. He worked on a dairy farm. He was kidnapped, taken hostage in Gaza, and then he was killed.
That's indeed a gruesome update, but we'd like to thank you for your time and insight here on Newsday. Arise special correspondent live from Tel Aviv.